couldn't. I love the night. That's the only time I feel really alive.
That's what David wanted.
Blood, I was to find, was a necessity as well.
A vampire in love with a slayer. It's rather poetic. I am the monster the breathing men would kill. I am Dracula.
Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down, and you know what that means. It's time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. As always, I'm your host, Lena Nazari. Go to lenanazari.com to sign up for my mailing list, which is my fanged family. You can also contact me from there, but honestly, the quickest thing to do is to go to Instagram, The Beautiful Dead Podcast. I do respond to my messages there. I respond to my emails too, but just not as quickly. And that's where you can really see what I'm up to, what I'm doing. That being said, the fanged family does get to see things like new appearances and new covers to the book before anyone else. But following me on Instagram is probably the quickest way to know what I'm up to. And that's where I'm going to put stuff that I'm just randomly out there doing. That's where you're really going to know what I'm up to. I do not want to take too much time because we have a lot to talk about with this one. This is one of the few times, if you're watching me on YouTube, where you're going to see me on camera in a tank top. And that is because I am healing a brand new tattoo. It just happened like 36 hours ago on my upper back at the base of my neck. Go to Instagram, you can see a picture of what it is, but that's why you get yourself Lena in a tank top right now. So, in case you were wondering, that's also why my hair is pulled around like this, because I don't want it laying on my back right now for obvious reasons. It was worth it. Let me tell you, it's worth it. Okay, so this is one, I honestly don't remember how the DVD came into my possession. I'm gonna guess like used record store. That's where I find a lot of these random DVDs. And then I just have this shelf above me that's full of random DVDs that eventually I'm gonna get to. I think that's probably how I ended up finding Village of the Vampire. I knew nothing about it. I just grabbed it. And then I thought, all right, let's go ahead and watch it. And let me just say, I'll never watch it again. I'll tell you that right now, right out of the gate. Like 4 minutes in, I'll never watch it again. It's done. I'll put it away to never touch it again. If anyone wants it, ask. I'll give it to you. All right, if you have never listened to this, watched this, massive spoiler alerts. I'm going to ruin everything. We go from beginning to end. I tell you all of the stuff, so massive spoiler alert. That being said, you can just watch me talk about it and then you never have to watch it. So you're welcome. Okay, let's do this. We're talking about Village of the Vampire. And it was from 2012? No, I actually think it's younger than that. 2020. It's from 2020. And it is actually Italian, I believe. So the version that I watched is actually English dubbed. And some people might say, well, oh, that's why you had a bad experience. No, it wasn't the English dubbing. Trust me. Okay, let's do this. I've got 9 pages of notes, so you know it's about to be a doozy. We open on 2 young, scantily clad women. That's how you know this is going to be a winner. Running through the streets, and they are Elena and Samira. They stop and Samira's crying and she's saying, I hear him in my head. He speaks to me. Elena is like, calm down. But then she sees a man in the shadows and she says, run. Samira disappears and Elena finds her dead. Turning around, she sees a man, and then we get the title card right in it. Okay. Now we're in an office in the daytime. And a woman named Rebecca is looking at a newspaper with a picture of Elena. I would love to tell you what the headline says, but it's in Italian, so I don't know. And then a man, Alfredo, enters her office to talk to her, and we find out Elena is Rebecca's sister. Rebecca is a reporter, and she is headed out to a 2-week vacation and she plans to talk to an informant named Giordano who has information about Elena, who's obviously been missing for some time at this point. That night, she goes to a medieval bar, and I wish we had something like that, because that would be so freaky. If anyone knows of a medieval bar, I want to go check that out. She meets up with Giordano at a table in the back, and he's like a little nerdy and awkward, and he's a little bit weird, and he says like, I'm such a fan, and I didn't know where this was headed. But he's just how we get information, and she goes on to her mission, so we never see him again. But he pulls out a folder and he says, these are important documents. She takes it back to her office, and then we get a voiceover. So apparently the file gave him chills for 3 whole days. That's how intense these papers were. And it talks about a village named Temire. It was wiped from all the maps over 100 years ago, and it appears on all these supernatural blogs. And apparently there is a highly increased number of missing people in this village, Temire. He explains that his sister-in-law is Samira, and that she was in a relationship with Elena, and they went to the town to investigate the disappearances and haven't been seen since. In a flashback, we see that Elena and Rebecca were fighting. Elena wanted to be an investigative reporter just like her sister, and Rebecca's really not supportive. She doesn't think it's a good idea. So the implication is Elena went to go check out this town so that she could write an amazing investigative journalist piece and then impress her little sister, or impress her big sister. The next day, Rebecca leaves a voicemail for Alfredo explaining that she is spending her 2-week vacation in the mountains. As she travels, night falls, and we see that she is entering Temire. The local law enforcement does not seem happy to see her. She's told that cars are not allowed in the town, and so she's directed to parking, and the only place in town where she can stay, the only inn. And guys, we have another praying mantis. What are the odds? 2 weeks in a row, we have a praying mantis. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch last week's episode. 2 praying mantises in vampire movies in a row. I did not plan that. But the one thing I do want to say is, as she's walking to the inn, the music reminds me so much of Subspecies. I mean, so much of Subspecies. And the music throughout, like, and I'm going to talk about this later, but I can tell it was inspired by different things. At the end, she hears the sound of breaking glass, and she sees some doors moving by themselves, and she has no reaction. She's like totally stone-faced, trying to figure out, like, this door's opening and shutting by itself, and she's acting like she's always seen this. And then gets startled by a very unwelcoming innkeeper. We find out there's only 2 rooms available in this inn, and she is in luck because one of the guests left the previous night. So the second room has just become available. The innkeeper calls for her daughter Yolanda, who arrives to show Rebecca to her room. And it is the usual, like, clearly mistreated young girl with long hair who always looks down. It's just like such a classic horror trope that I was like, oh my goodness, we are in for it. So we got the spooky town, the weird innkeeper, and now we have the clearly mistreated young girl. That night, Rebecca is certain that someone is in her room. She finds the door open. This time she does a little bit of acting. She does look scared as she walks into the hall, but she sees no one. The next morning, she goes down to the lobby and comes across a whole bunch of people. Like, the whole town apparently hangs out at this inn. And one of them is this obnoxious horror writer and his super hot trophy wife. They know Rebecca from her work, letting it slip in front of the locals that she's a reporter, which the locals are not happy about. The writer, his name is Gaspire, and his trophy wife offer to show her around town, and she accepts. So they go out, they're walking around, they see a man in sunglasses under an umbrella who looks right at Rebecca, and then they meet Gabriel, who is the man who manages the church when the priest isn't around. We find out there is no cell service in town, and Gabriel tells them to stay away from the man under the umbrella. Rebecca looks back, the man is gone, but instead she thinks she sees her sister, but the vision is quickly gone, and then the church bell tolls. At a restaurant, the three enjoy some wine while Trophy Wife tries to figure out what story Rebecca is chasing. Gaspire actually knows about Rebecca's sister that she's missing, and so he figures out that she's probably here looking for Elena. The couple explains that the girl who was staying in Rebecca's room seemed scared the day before and then was just gone. And Rebecca must be the worst investigative journalist, because she's like, oh, okay. I would have been like, what do you mean she's gone? We find out that Gaspire's latest book is out. He's a little bit freaked out that it's going to be a flop like the one before, which I was like, dude, I understand. So they actually went on vacation purposefully so that they wouldn't check the bestsellers list, they wouldn't read reviews, and he could just breathe for a little bit. And then they share the driest kiss ever. Like, the lack of chemistry is so real in this. A man approaches the table to meet Rebecca, and we find out his name is Caleb. He runs the local theater. Then the mayor approaches and tells everybody, like, oh, this is Caleb, and he runs the theater, and he is so good to this town, and we love him. And this is when I was like, all right, this is the dude from Below the Umbrella, right? This is our vampire. With Caleb is a man named William who takes care of him, and two super hot chicks named Anastasia and Cora. Caleb invites Rebecca, Gaspire, and Trophy Wife to the theater that night for a ballet. Vampire pause. This is our first vampire pause. So we're pretty sure these are our vampires because it is so obvious. And I'm not saying this as the vampire professional. I'm just saying anyone who watched this movie would be like, that's the vampire. So that tells us they can be in the sun as long as they're under umbrellas and in sunglasses, and I hate that. I hate that. The idea that a vampire can just put an umbrella over him and then walk out into the sunlight is such bullshit. I hate that so much. All right, we're done. That night, Gaspire, Rebecca, and Trophy Wife head to the theater, which is extremely nice for such a small little town. Clearly, Caleb has a lot of money. Caleb has reserved them 3 seats in the front. All the locals are there, including that awful innkeeper and her husband, brother. I don't know. There's a throwaway line about how the husband is actually her brother, and that's why the kid is so weird. And then they never touch on that again. So I'm like, why even bring that up then? That's so weird. So Caleb opens the show on this dark stage, standing in a spotlight, and he promises a distressing yet unforgettable performance. At this time, I was like, if this is a ripoff of the Theatre de Vampire from Interview with the Vampire, and they kill somebody in front of the audience, I'm turning this movie off. At this point in time, I was like, oh, they better not. But what we get is they start playing the Concerto No. 2 in G minor from the Four Seasons, so that's Summer for anyone who knows, and we get this ballet. It's just a ballet. But while the show is going on, Caleb approaches a woman who's alone above the stage. She's on the catwalk for whatever reason. I thought it was a box at one point, but then it's clearly the catwalk. I'm like, why is she on the catwalk? So he approaches her. He's like trying to seduce her, and there's this back and forth between them, and then he vamps out. So fangs, 2 sharp retractable canines, red pupils, and he growls. Thankfully he didn't hiss, because you guys know how much I hate that. He growls. As the dance is completed, a ballerina looks up and sees Caleb above her with blood pouring out of his mouth. She screams and runs, but the audience thinks that's part of the show. The ballerina's crying, and she runs into the arms of one of Caleb's girls, who then vamps out and eats the ballerina. And then we see that several vampires have eaten all of the ballerinas backstage as Caleb returns to the stage and the audience applauds. And I'm just like, aren't they going to notice if you kill an entire ballet troupe? I mean, for like one girl to go missing every couple of months is one thing, but like a whole ballet troupe, because he even says, oh, they're this famous ballet troupe and we brought them here to our town. That's going to raise some red flags, just saying. After the show, Rebecca is showering when the water turns to blood, but then we see it's just like a vision, because then she's standing back at the mirror and she hears her name whispered, so she follows the voice into her room and sees a zombie version of her sister, who then disappears. As she's looking where her sister was, Elena appears behind her and walks out of the room. So Rebecca follows her into the hallway in slow motion, and then snow starts to fall, and she has a vision of the vampires feeding on a ballerina on the stage of the theater as this haunting orchestral music plays. Then the ballerina turns into Elena, Rebecca screams, and then she wakes up in the shower. So she had the vision in the shower, and it started with the blood. And I was like, what? Vampire pause. Okay. I am trying to be very nice here and give it the benefit of the doubt at this point. So I'm going to create some form of logic as to what I just watched. So I'm assuming this is Caleb who is planting these visions in her head. And it's either two things, like he has a type of mind control, obviously, but either he has set his sights on her and is trying to kind of break down her resolve, or this is just what he does. He plays with your mind, like he plays with his food before he eats it. That is what I assumed I was watching. At this point, I was 59 minutes in, and I'm like, okay, well, it's got to be close to done. So then I looked over and realized this movie is 2 hours and 45 minutes long. Yeah. So I looked down at the time bar and was like, that can't be right. So then I pulled this and I looked at the back of the DVD case and it says 165 minutes. And I was like, I don't know if I could do 3 hours of this. 3 hours. But I have made a commitment to you guys to watch every vampire movie ever made, and I'm gonna stick it out, and I have watched worse. So I hit play and kept going. The next morning, she goes down to the lobby for coffee. She's waiting for her new friends to wake up, and she's told by the creepy innkeeper that Caleb is beloved by the town. He provides for the town and has showed them the true path to happiness. Rebecca shows her a picture of Elena, and the innkeeper says, if you bring trouble to the town, you'll find trouble, is basically what he says. I'm paraphrasing. Rebecca goes into town and she encounters Gabriel and asks if he's seen Elena. He tells her, follow me, and she does. They enter the church, and Gabriel explains that many of the villagers won't enter the church. So this was where I was like, okay, so the holy relics and the holy land is a no-go for the vampires in this world. Caleb explains Gabriel is dead but not dead, living on blood, and a disciple of the devil. Okay. All right. Rebecca figures it out pretty quickly, but she won't say the word. And Gabriel says, and I didn't say he's the only one. So this is our man saying like, hey, he's a vampire. There's a bunch of vampires around here. Rebecca's on a bench reading the file that she was given after she leaves the church, and Gaspire sits down and explains that Trophy Wife doesn't feel good. She's back in the room. When they return to the inn, there's a wax-sealed envelope waiting for Rebecca. Yeah, that's right. Caleb, in 2020, has done the envelope with the wax seal and sealed it, and he's like written in calligraphy. All right, that's fine. I actually think I would love it if a guy sent me a love letter that was like in old script with ink and had a wax seal. I would think that's pretty cool. It's a letter from Caleb inviting her to the restaurant that they met at after sundown to drink some wine and talk. Rebecca has another vision that I don't need to talk about because it's absolutely pointless, and it doesn't stop her from joining Caleb at the restaurant. And this is when we get Albinoni's Adagio in G minor, which is one of my favorites, so I was excited to hear it.
It's a pleasure to see you.
She questions him about Elena's disappearance, about his wealth, about his winery, and he pours himself some wine, and he does drink it. So I'm like, all right, so the vampires at least can drink alcohol. That's my type of vampire. We also find out Caleb is from Eastern Europe, where he met a man who was feared by his people and once told Caleb,
the blood is the life.
the blood is the life. Vampire pause. I know he is not implying that Dracula made him. I know we are not bringing Dracula into this piece of shit, right? Right, Caleb? We're not going to do that, right? All right, let's go back. Caleb reveals that the reason everyone loves his wine is because he put some of his blood in it.
But to make the wine really perfect, we need to mix it with my blood.
And then admits that he knew Elena and Samira, that Elena was strong and special, so he brought her into his kingdom, and apparently she tasted good. He says that right to her face. Then he flashes Fang and Rebecca leaves, but she just kind of looks annoyed as she's running through this dark village alone. She looks annoyed. Obviously, if you're watching me on YouTube, I will play as much as I can. And YouTube better not give me a hard time about this, because you guys have to see, like, the acting is so bad. She should look freaked the fuck out, okay? Because she just found out her sister's turned into a vampire. She's been drinking vampire blood in the wine. The village is full of vampires. She's all alone, but instead she just looks kind of annoyed. Then she finds herself in the theater with Caleb's two brides, Anastasia and Cora, who tell her, "I'll take you to your sister if you want." Then we get a stupid jump scare, and then she is back at the restaurant.
It's our wicked sister.
Your wicked sister. Ma'am.
And Caleb has sent a letter saying, "I'm sorry I couldn't make it to our date." So he was never there. So this whole thing was a vision. And again, we're going to assume Caleb put that into her brain. And then he says, "I'm going to send wine to your room to make up for it." Meanwhile, Gaspire and Trophy Wife also got Caleb's wine delivered to their room, so they're drinking it because they're celebrating because they plan to go home the next day. Rebecca goes to her room and she's drinking the wine. Why? He just told you, "I put my blood in the wine," and you're still drinking it. So either you're mesmerized or you're fucking stupid. I'm gonna go with number 2 because I'm done being nice to this movie or this character. I don't think this might be the most I've cursed on a YouTube video, but we're all adults here, it's fine. And if you guys heard me when I'm not on my podcast, you would know that I have a foul mouth. All right. So she goes to bed, and I did a time check at this point, and I still had an hour and 20 minutes to watch. And I was like, I'm gonna do this for my viewers. I'm gonna stick it out, and then I'll never watch it again because I did it for you guys, okay? So she goes to bed. So now we see Caleb walking slow-mo through his house. His brides are making out naked in a bed, which he approaches. Rebecca, I think, is either seeing this as a vision or she's dreaming it, because she starts to have a little me time by herself in her bed. Then she, there's a very long dream that I do not need to talk about, okay? It was like 7 minutes long, and it was so unnecessary. She's awakened by Gaspire at the door. He lost time after drinking the wine, and when he came to, his wife was gone. They go to Caleb's house, and they sneak in, and they see Marta, Trophy Wife, being played with by the brides. Caleb comes into the room. Caleb tells Marta, "Drink this glass of wine," which she does. He kisses her, then he vamps out, bites her neck. Gaspire and Rebecca just watch, which I don't know what you could even do at that point. So then they try to run out of the house. But when they get down to the bottom, just before they can get out, they see that one of the local officers is outside the house, and he's telling William, "If Caleb wants his ingredients, he's going to come talk to me." William then threatens the officer, who leaves. Gaspire and Rebecca try to make a break for it, but they're seen by the two brides. So they take off into the night, but Caleb sees them, and now he knows that they are there. Once they get over the wall, because he has this like big stone wall around his castle, which I want a castle. I mean, I could put up with Caleb to live in a castle and get unlimited wine. I could do that. Once over the wall, the two come in contact with this group that we have yet to meet. It's like 2 hours in. I'm like, who are these people? They have swords. They throw a bag over Rebecca's head. Meanwhile, Alfredo hasn't heard from Rebecca, so he called the informant to find out where she went. Side story. Rebecca and Gaspire wake up in a room with their attackers, who is apparently led by Gabriel. He's their leader. They're hunters, and Gabriel is like, he's so pissed that they went to Caleb's house. He says, like, do you know what you have done? And Rebecca basically says, like, you better tell me the whole truth. So now Gabriel tells Caleb's story, which we get to see in like a whole flashback. In a nutshell, when Caleb was a young boy, he meets this young girl from somewhere in his village, and they play in the woods. And the father finds out that he was hanging out with this girl every day, and he beats Caleb, and then he kills his little dog. Why? Leave the dogs alone. But this whole thing, the little girl witnesses, so she knows the kind of life Caleb lives. They continue to play every day and sneak around, and then as they grow into young adults, they fall in love, which of course they had to kind of keep secret. Caleb has to leave her when he is sent to Transylvania to pay off his father's debts. He sends her love letters while he's away and talks about meeting a count. The audacity to imply that he went to Transylvania, worked for Count Dracula, and Count Dracula turned him. The audacity. So he returns, he finds his mother crying, and he finds out that his girl is dead. And the implication is that after Caleb left, his father set his sights on Caleb's girl, assaulted her, and she couldn't live with it, so she killed herself. That is the implication. And I don't have to bleep what I say because I'm not monetized. So we see everybody's crying. He goes to where she's laid out. He cries over her body, which actually, can I just take a moment here to say that the guy who plays Caleb, he acts his heart out. His acting is so good in this. Like, what a shame. What a shame, because he's actually very, very good in this. He finds his father drunk and passed out, and we see that Caleb has come back as a vampire. He pays his father back for all the shit he's put Caleb through, ripping out his dad's throat as his mom comes into the room. So now we're back with Gabriel telling the story. Caleb has been using his power to help anyone who's sick, and so that's why the town loves him so much, because they'll bring, like, they're crippled, they're lame. Apparently the innkeeper's daughter was dying and he saved her. So this is why everybody, like, absolutely is indebted to him and loyal to him. I time checked again at this point and still had 45 minutes to go. And guys, I want to say I did this without alcohol, without any kind of help at all. I stuck it out for 3 hours, and that was, I had to like pause and screen record and stuff, so I think it took me like a total of 4+ hours to do this. So at this point in time, anyone who has drunk the wine has vampire blood in them. If they are bit by the vampire but not completely drained, they will rise as a vampire. So, vampire pause. If you ingest the vampire's blood, which everybody in the town basically has at this point, and the vampires bite you but they don't kill you, you turn. But if you die, if you are drained, anything that leads to your death, then you won't rise as a vampire. It's basically how this works. Gabriel is using Rebecca as bait since Caleb obviously has a hard-on for her. The hunters really don't even know how many vampires are in the town, but Rebecca has an idea. We get to see the good hunters gearing up for the fight, which you know I love that trope. Crossbows, holy water, wooden stakes is essentially what they're doing. And then they head to the inn. So while she's looking for her file, 3 of the hunters are attacked outside. She's looking at the file and she's realizing that all of the missing people in this file are in this town, and one of them is one of Caleb's brides. So they know pretty much everybody in that file who's a missing person is probably a vampire in the town. The innkeeper's daughter is a vampire. Shocker. The hunters kill her and then the innkeeper freaks out. The police commissioner from the very beginning, the one who greeted Rebecca and was like, we don't like outsiders here, he is a vampire. He fangs out. And this is where I gotta say, like, guys, the fangs are so much whiter than the teeth. And it drives me crazy. The innkeeper pulls the bolt from her daughter and tries to kill Gaspire. He shoots her. Good for you, Gaspire. Good for you. I hated that chick. In the fight, Rebecca passes out, and I was hoping she would get killed while she was passed out, but no luck. And I still had 30 more minutes to go. Vision time. Lots of like whispering and chanting in the background, and the slowest slow-mo walk ever down a red hall. Caleb is on the stage again. He's talking to her in riddles and basically says, I'm waiting for you. She comes to and she's like, he's at the theater. Duh! If he's not in his castle, he's at the theater. Like, I don't know why this is so hard. Vamp Cop grabs Rebecca, and Gaspire somehow knows that she's been taken to Caleb. So he grabs Rebecca and then they're just gone. So that tells me that vampires are supposed to be super fast, but then why didn't they use that in the fight? Whatever.
Caleb isn't in the castle, he's in the theater!
The hunters are making their way through town, killing all of the vampires in town, and they're headed to the theater because they ultimately want to take out Caleb. In the theater, Marta, trophy wife, is now a vampire. So Caleb has 3 brides. Gotta have 3 brides, right? Caleb explains that this night they will complete the rite and give her the gift of immortality. Because apparently Caleb wants one more bride than Dracula. I don't know if it's a contest, but he wants more brides. He needs a bigger bed. That's all I'm saying. And then he's got this monologue about how he shouldn't be vilified because he does what humans do, which is hurt each other all the time. Caleb explains that God made him this way by taking his love away. Vampire pause. We learn in this monologue that if vampires drink from the dead, they die. And that is why he couldn't turn his girlfriend when he got back to the village. So, at least that part I caught. So apparently he's gonna like fix his broken heart by having just a huge amount of vampire chicks in his castle. He's like, if I just have a harem, that will fix my broken heart. Now we find out that Lena has been turned when she comes out onto the stage. So he's got 4 brides already. And then she's like, join me. And then she kisses her sister. But she gets shot by a crossbow in the heart from the back. And we see the hunters are here to save the day. Vampire Cop gets killed. And then Gaspare sees his vampire wife while Rebecca is crying over her dead sister. Rebecca tells him, that is not your wife. Get a stake and kill her.
Martha.
Hello, my darling.
That's not Marta. That's just another bitch of the devil.
Gabriel pulls a cross on Caleb while behind him, Rebecca just like calmly walks off stage. I saw it in the background. I'm like, where's she going? So now we know the cross is a thing, but we're going to go back to that. Caleb uses his powers to light the cross on fire. Then he shows up behind Gabriel and bites him. Rebecca throws holy water on him and he screeches like acid. So we know the holy water is a thing.
In the name of God, I bless you!
2 brides flank one of the hunters. And all I could think of was Jurassic Park.
Clever girl.
This scene made me think of Jurassic Park. Then both the brides are killed. The main brides are killed. One of the human helpers is shot and he's like, I'm not a vampire, I don't want to die. But the hunter kicks him in the face, and I laughed out loud at this. I did. I laughed out loud. At this point in time, I was like, can everybody just die so we can be done? William and a hunter have a face-off. Again, fangs are so much whiter than the teeth. Props department. You can just put them in like coffee or tea and they will stain. So you can just stain them to match the teeth. It's not that hard. William is killed, but not before he bites the hunter, who begs a teammate to please kill him so he won't turn. And the hunter does stake him, and that is a good friend. If your friend gets bitten and doesn't want to turn, stake them. Don't cry, don't beg for another way, stake them. Gaspare has a showdown with his hot vampire wife. He kisses her, gets a handful of that booty, says, I love you and I always will, and then he stakes her in the back. And honestly, I didn't think he had it in him. I thought he was gonna fall for her and then she was gonna kill him. So good for Gaspare. Like, he has turned into quite a badass. So now Caleb is all that's left, and it's time for the master showdown. Instead, we get way too much talking between Caleb and Rebecca. And I'm like, girl, don't explain yourself. He does not care. And also, Caleb, why are you listening? Why are you standing there and listening? Just kill everybody and move on to a new town and start it again. But maybe this time, don't make the disappearances so obvious, and don't tell everybody you're putting your blood in the wine. Just saying. Try it again. So while he's listening, one of the hunters shoots him. So he turns off the lights of the theater with his mind. And so now they're all in darkness, and they just have the light of a single flashlight. We see Caleb wiping out the hunters one by one. Boom, 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 boom. It's down to the bitten and very weak Gabriel, Gaspare, and Rebecca.
It was nice being your friend.
Caleb, please, it doesn't have to end like this. Caleb, I beg you, let him go.
She watches Caleb snap Gaspare's neck and she runs. But Caleb shows up in her path, only to be shot by Gabriel and then staked by Rebecca. And then they slow-mo walk through the town as Alfredo arrives with the police, too late. She gets into his car, tears are rolling down her cheeks. Gabriel is in the other car, they make eye contact, giving each other sort of a knowing look. He's like holding on to his neck. Let's hope he never drank any of that wine, but we don't know. And just like that, 3 hours of my life is gone, never to return again. And I ask myself, why did I do this? Why? So, this was like a 40-minute episode without me adding any clips or anything like that. So, really quickly, let's talk about tropes I love and tropes I hate. And you guys already know this about me. I hate when the vampires can be in the sunlight. I hate when they bring Dracula into it. Now, to their defense, they did not say Dracula, but they said the blood is the life, a count, Transylvania, all that stuff. And I'm just like, oh no. But I guess we'll allow it because they didn't say the name. I love the montage of the hunters getting ready. I love the whole putting visions in their heads thing, but it was way overused in this. Way overused in this. I am not doing the ratings. I'm just telling you right now. They are more scary than they are sexy, and this movie tried so hard to make them sexy that it wasn't sexy. It's like the sexiness in this movie was like when a guy walks up and says, I'm a good guy. I'm like, all right, well, if you have to say you're a good guy, you're not a good guy. If you have to shove the sex down my throat, then you're not sexy. That's not sexy. So that's all I'm going to say about that. my thoughts, if I didn't make it abundantly clear. This movie was an hour and 30 minutes too long. I have never been so close to bailing out on a review. I mean, I was like, I don't think I can do this. The only reason I stuck it out is because I knew eventually I was going to have to cover this one, and we've talked about this. We're going to do the good, the bad, the ugly. We're going to do them all on here. They can't all be winners, right? And I don't mind a bad vampire movie, but a bad vampire movie that is 3 hours of my time, that pisses me off, because I could have watched 2 movies and done 2 reviews in that time. That's why I'm mad. Anywho, the pacing is excruciatingly slow. It has this sort of bipolar soundtrack that's split between soothing classical and then instrumentals that sound awfully close to Subspecies and Bram Stoker's Dracula soundtracks. Like spastic violin done, children's spooky laughter, whispers, it's all over the place. Which, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of here for. Like, I think if it was the 90s and I could get this on CD, I would absolutely buy it and play it way too much. It would be so obnoxious. The problem is that it combined with the poor writing and the shit acting was just too much. Now, I have to give it to the guy who plays Caleb. He went in 110%. Despite how cliched and corny the writing is, he made it work. Like, he was so good. Gaspire, also very, very good. The chick who plays Rebecca basically phoned in her performance. It's like she was forced to do it and she was gonna give the bare minimum. If I found out that she was dating the director or she was like the sister of the producer, then it would make sense. She was so unlikable and she was the main character. So she's part of the reason that the movie felt so long, because she has to carry the movie and she didn't. It was awful. The visions were completely unnecessary. The sex scene, the big sexy dream, was like a weird trailer. The way that it was shot, it was not sexy at all. The vampires were so messy, so messy. It was not completely thought through. We've said it before, like, they never expect a vampire nerd to break it down like I do, but still, if you're gonna write a vampire movie and literally call it Village of the Vampire, then your vampires better be really, really thought out. What makes me mad about this movie is that they actually had something and they ruined it. And I think that is the most disappointing thing for a horror, is when you have a good idea and you fumbled it, you botched it. That makes me so mad. The backstory of Caleb is so tragic and sad, and it explains why he would just be empty inside. He's just lost his ability to love. Him being embedded in a town that's not on the map, where the villagers help keep him secret and keep him fed in exchange for like healing and blood, that works. That's a good idea. Even the idea that he's put some of his blood in the wine is so interesting. They really should have explored that more. But instead, we get these stupid visions, these long, slow scenes for absolutely no reason. None of it is used to its full potential. If they've made the visions like a way to sort of tear her down by showing her her dead sister, I would get that. Like, I'm breaking her resolve. It's like breaking a wild stallion. But they didn't use that at all. We didn't get to see what the visions were doing to her, if they were real, if they were not real. They were just there like it was an art piece, but then it was never used at all. And I don't understand, why tell her about the wine? Why tell her that? Or why get her all horned up to the point where she's playing with herself? What was the point of that? Like, what? I don't understand. You didn't use it at all. You got her all horny and then you didn't seduce her. So what was the point of that? And then Gabriel has been complicit this whole time. Now he's part of a band of hunters and he's going after Caleb. And also, why does Caleb turn so many people into vampires? That doesn't seem like a very smart move. If your only food source is visitors, why would you create more mouths to feed? So if I were him, I'd have me, my henchmen, my 2 brides, and that's it. We are the vampires. We are in charge. We say what goes. We wipe out the visitors. If you're turning all of these people, then you're just creating more vampires you have to feed. Why? Why would you do that? It's just stupid. There's no reason for Dracula to be his maker. I don't understand why. So you're telling me that Dracula turned you and then just sent you home? Why? Why would he do that? That makes no sense to me. And then it is never brought up. Like, if Dracula is your maker, then you should be one of the more powerful vampires. And if that's the case, then what are you doing messing around in this town? It makes no sense. What is the purpose of that? Is it just to be cool? Is it just to add clout? Like, did the writer say, you know, it would be so cool if Dracula made him? Why? It doesn't matter. It doesn't add anything to the story. You could just make him any vampire from anywhere, and he still has a good idea by taking over this village. You don't have to be from Dracula. I would have liked this movie if they trimmed out all of the excessive stuff and just not tried to make it so artistic and so fluffy. If they carved all that out, went with their basic story, recast the lead because she was god awful. She brought the whole movie down. If they did that, it would have been digestible. I would have been like, all right, that's okay. But they didn't. They didn't. Next time, listen, if you're gonna write a vampire movie, please consult me. Please send me an email. I will help you do this the right way. All right, we're moving on. So I decided I have earned something good. So I went back to my first and second season when I was audio only and not on YouTube, and I said, okay, which one can I bring to YouTube? And the answer is From Dusk Till Dawn. Yes, people, next week we're gonna do From Dusk Till Dawn. I'm gonna do a rewatch. I'm gonna bring it to YouTube for you. I haven't seen it in a few years, so it's time for a rewatch. And the second one I think just had its anniversary, so we'll do this one and then we'll do the second one. So we are doing From Dusk Till Dawn. You know all the places to find it if you haven't seen it. Come back next week. In the meantime, don't watch Village of the Vampire. I took this bullet for you, so you don't have to watch it, because I love you. And I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Good evening.
And big finish.